Welcome everyone to this webinar of Forvis Mazars and Schouten Zekerheid. During this webinar of today, we'll talk you through everything that's important when you're employing in the Netherlands. This will be a 60-minute session. I will promise not to cross the 60-minute mark. And please know that this session will be recorded. So if you miss anything or you want to share, you can still share with your colleagues or others. Today we have Marissa de Pauw, Jan Maarten Bochhoven and Eline Boedhoe and myself, Alexander Rasink, presenting two main topics. One will be a lot about tax and social security, and the second part of the webinar will be all about pensions. So promising topics. After the end of the webinar, you will be prepared for what's coming in 2026 and 2027. We'll first start with the part of Forvis Mazars, and after the half-hour mark, we'll just turn it over to Marissa and Jan Maarten. So on the Forvis Mazars side, we'll be talking about tax and social security. We have a brief agenda of today, and as you can see, there will be a couple of topics, and actually a couple is a lot. So we got a lot to cover in only 30 minutes, but we'll try our very best. Unfortunately, we cannot dive in too deep in each of the topics, but we'll see how far we get. I will not read out all of this in the agenda. If you're not familiar with Forvis Mazars, is myself, tax partner, head of global mobility services for Forvis Mazars. And with me, you'll see her in a minute, Eline Boedhoe, tax consultant, also in the team in the Netherlands, employment tax and global mobility. In brief, Forvis Mazars, if you do not know us, we are an international firm. As you can see, we are covering 100 plus countries, which many of people don't know yet, but now you do. And if you look at what we do, is we are a multidisciplinary organization, not just offering tax, but also accounting, compliance, which you can see in the next slide, including legal, audit, and insurance assurance. So let us turn to the content of today. Eline, please.
Yes, thank you, Alexander, for the introduction. I will be taking you with me into the wondrous world of the 30% ruling in the Netherlands, which is also known as the expat regime. Maybe just to dive a bit deeper into the background of this regime. Expats in the Netherlands can opt to exchange a part of their gross salary to a net salary, which is currently stated at 30%. Well, of course, there's a few conditions to this, but this Dutch expat regime is still very attractive, but subject to different changes. Some key conditions to be able to apply the expat regime. The expat must have some specific expertise, and this is filled in by a salary threshold, which changes every year. It's indexated, and the expat must be recruited from abroad. Now, what does this entail? If an expat is already living in the Netherlands and you want to employ them in your company, it could be the case that this expat can no longer apply the expat regime because they are not recruited from abroad. So an expat must be living abroad when the employment contract is concluded. A formal agreement must also be drafted and signed by both parties, so the employer and employee, and you must receive an official approval from the Dutch tax authorities to be able to apply the 30% ruling. Well, what's important for this regime? You must request it on time. It must be requested within 4 months of the commencement of the employment. Otherwise, the total duration of the expat regime will be shortened. Well, we work a lot for employers who want to apply the 30% ruling for employees. So we see some common pitfalls also with these employers and employees. For instance, no formal agreement being made between employer and employee. Now you may be thinking, why would they need a formal agreement? Who would not want some extra net salary? But it is important to do this because since the gross salary of the employee is lowered, some premiums will not be calculated over the other 30%. Also, an incorrect implementation in the payroll is something we see often in practice. So, for instance, not monitoring the salary threshold throughout the year, which is very important to be able to still use the 30% ruling for the employee. Next to that, an application after a Dutch residency has been established is something we see very often. Is that something you can tell me maybe a little bit more about, Alexander?
Yes, absolutely. This is the point where individuals come to the Netherlands first and then realize that there's a 30% ruling. But at that time, they're already a resident and they're not recruited from abroad. So this leads in many cases to mismatches and disappointment that the 30% ruling will be denied.
Yes, yes. Next to this, what we also see is sometimes when employees, for instance, get fired or they leave a company and they get an extra bonus payment after the ending of the employment, sometimes the 30% ruling is still applied to that payout, which is not allowed. And additionally, sometimes employees will maybe change employers and they still want to make use of the 30% ruling, but you will have to apply again to the Dutch tax authorities within 3 months of having your new employment contract. Well, as I said, the 30% ruling is subject to some changes in the Netherlands. So 30% is going to be lowered to 27% in 2027. And a higher salary threshold will be utilized. Additionally, there is a transitional period for certain people who have already used the 30% ruling in 2023 and 2024. So they will still be allowed to use the 30% ruling instead of 27%. But for people who have applied the 30% ruling in 2024, they will have to make use of the higher salary threshold. Additionally, there is a beneficial expatriate status for people with a 30% ruling, but this was abolished in 2025. What does this entail? The people who have this beneficial expatriate status do not have to pay tax on their wealth. But a transitional period also is in place for these people, for people who have used the beneficial expatriate status in or before 2023. Now, the last thing I wanted to say about this, the expat ruling is also kept for a taxable salary up to 262, sorry, euros per year, 262,000 euros per year, sorry, and this is indexed yearly.
Thank you, Eline. Thank you for this update on the 30% ruling or expat regime. Is indeed, so this major change it might be hidden in the last slide, is the fact that the 30% ruling holders will be paying tax on their wealth per 1 January 2025, at least most of them. So keep this in mind and inform your employees. Let's go on to the next slide and the next topic, which is the A1 certificate and certificate of coverage. You probably have heard of it. If not, you should be educating yourself as soon as possible. What is it? An A1 determines which social security system applies in case of cross-border activity. The A1 is for the EER or the EU plus a few countries, and the certificate of coverage applies in countries that have a treaty, a totalization agreement entered into between them. So again, what is this relevant for? That is employees who are temporarily posted, assigned to another country, work there for a year or 2 years or even longer, or multi-country workers, so individuals who will be working in multiple countries at the same time consecutively. Also relevant for self-employed individuals and others, but we'll limit to employees for now. This regulation is not per se new, but the landscape is being shaken up and we will be expecting some changes in about 2 years' time. Why I'm saying this? Because there is some new guidance provided by the European Parliament and Commission, is that some changes needs to be made to be more effective in the future. The new ways of working and the old rules do not per se fit. For example, that an A1 is no longer necessary for business travelers, or that if you spend 30 days in another country, that you can still in a period of 30 days, you can still work 3 days maximum in another country without having the need of an A1. This is all future, so you might want to forget this for now. Very importantly, as of today, and some countries are stricter than others, is that if you are sending someone abroad, even if it's for 1 day, even for a conference in another country, please make sure that you have the A1 in place. It just confirms the Social Security position, which is probably so apparent clear for everyone. But you want to avoid those disputes with the Social Security authorities. The A1 also protects against double Social Security contributions. You don't want to overpay when the entitlements are only single. So please keep in mind that indeed there will be more scrutiny on A1s, especially if you're in temporary work agencies, because there is a lot of social fraud recognized in the market. And this was also the reason to introduce many new regulations that touch on the information sharing between countries, automation of processes. So in short, making everything much easier, but also for the authorities to audit. So for you, what to do is make sure that you have a certificate or an A1 before the start of the activities abroad. Also for short-term activity, including those business travelers. This means also that you need to track the travel, because the assumption that someone's not working abroad doesn't help you. So please look if you have a system in place that does travel track all of your employees, so including the directors. So what is your current procedure on this? And as to the next topic, we'll be looking at equal pay.
Yes. I think maybe this is one of the topics where people thought, this is the reason why I want to register for this webinar. It's very, I think it's quite difficult materials. And to maybe give a little bit of background, the EU initiated a pay transparency rule that must be implemented by all EU member states by the 7th of June 2026. Now you may be thinking, I haven't heard anything about this in the Netherlands. That could be true because there's no real rules that have been set in place right now yet. The aim is to implement these on the 1st of January in 2027, but it is not yet sure of this, if this is going to be, well, if we can be able to make it work or not. Yeah. What does it really entail? The EU, the pay transparency rules introduce a mandatory pay transparency and equal pay obligations in the EU. The reason they kind of wanted to implement this is because studies have shown that women earn up to 78% of every 100% that a man earns. So they wanted to close this gap between men and women, and that's the reason why they implemented these rules. Well, what can these rules entail? Companies will have to disclose the salary ranges to candidates who want to apply for a certain position. So it must be visible on a job application what the salary range is or what the starting salary will be for an employee. Additionally, employees will be able to access pay information, including gender comparison. You may be thinking, is it only going to be a gender comparison? This is up to the countries themselves. So the reason they implemented these rules was because of the pay discrepancy between men and women, but it could also be that a country says, we want to do the same between races or sexual orientations or anything else. Next to that, a pay gap reporting will be incentivized for employers with over 100 employees in the EU. We know that some American companies are also watching right now. You may be thinking, what if I have 100 employees in America and only maybe 10 people in the EU? This will not be the case for you. It is really based on 100 employees based in the EU. And if in this reporting you see, I have more than 5% unjustified pay gap, you must be taking corrective actions to close this gap and be able to later on say, I have less than 5% of a gap. You may be thinking, okay, well, this is only going to be more administrative work for me. I don't really see the benefits of this. But I think it's also important to note that this is going to be able to show that you're a good employer for employees who maybe want to start working for your company, to be able to show we really take these measures into account and we want to do something about this. So not only look at the obligations, but also consider the benefits. Now, what can you do to take action? I think it's important to state that the first thing you should do is review the access to pay data, the salary ranges, and the pay gap supporting data to be able to finalize your pay gap reporting obligations once these are in place. Not only for the Netherlands, but also for other countries in the EU. Be sure to adapt the recruitment process to comply with the new regulation. You must be able to show that the salary ranges are visible on your job applications and also the starting salary for new employees. And the reward structures should also be audit-proof. So if the tax authorities maybe come up to you and say, we want to see what's going on here, you have to be able to show that you've made progress, and you have to have an objective and gender-neutral system to be able to comply with the pay gap reporting. And I think Alexander can tell you a little bit more about the certification through Forvis Mazars.
Yeah, absolutely. So this equal pay, it might seem that it's far away. It may take some time to implement, but this is something that's happening now. So there's a lot about being a responsible employer, and this is one of the main measures you can take to be future-proof. So if you want to have this looked into, contact us. You can obtain an equal pay certification through our organization. We're happy to explain you more about it. Also, if you look into some more information for us locally, we do work with our legal teams, not just in the Netherlands, but also in other countries. Then we'll have a quick look at international remote work. We realize that work as of today is not just being a resident in one country and working only in that country. It's very common to work a short or longer period of time in another country. And this comes with responsibilities. Of course, there's a lot of employees who really like to work for a shorter or longer period of time abroad. So it's a great benefit. It helps in retention of employees. But very often the impact on compliance, regulatory compliance, is underestimated. So do consider, if you've not done this yet, also with very short period of time abroad and remote work, that there is a wage tax, social security, and legal aspect, labor law particularly. Certainly, there's a difference between incidental remote work and structural remote work. The more structural it gets, the more impact it potentially can get. Think about residency, for example, but also in regards to social security. So do consider the risks here. It might trigger foreign payroll withholding and reporting. So having a payroll in only the home country does not fix the overseas obligations. Talk to your tax team and they'll be triggered by the potential permanent establishment risk that they encounter in the other country. And I've mentioned this briefly, but also residency disputes that may come up. So what happens if you stay abroad for a longer period of time? And what does this do with coverage? Also, for example, with healthcare, if your employee falls sick. So the best practice is here, even if it's simple, start implementing a remote work policy and a pre-approval process. It might seem very complex or not, or maybe very easy, but do spend some time in producing such an approval process. So you really want to know who goes where, and that we all agree that it's a good idea that someone is working for a short period of time in another country. Also worth checking is, what does your international work population look like today? Do you really have good visibility on all individual international activity? You might want to cap travels just to get a grip on your processes. So again, I mentioned this also before, is that the tracking of all these individuals, but also business travelers, is something that you need to incorporate in your compliance processes. So let's go to PE and payroll, which is closely connected also to the remote work, is that if you talk about permanent establishment, is a location that normally a company has in another country, and this triggers corporate income tax obligations. We are talking about employing, and we'll just show you briefly in what this means or how the two topics come together. But also the international work of an employee may trigger local payroll and reporting obligations because of the fact that there is presence in another country. You probably have heard about the 183-day rule. Certainly, that's important from a tax perspective, income tax more precisely. But this is overruled if there is a presence in the host location. The economic employer, for example, this is the employer or the party that is able to supervise. And this depends or varies depending on the country combination. So please do have a look, as it's not the same in every combination of countries. And here comes the PE again. So if the employer has a permanent establishment in the host location, it will trigger an obligation. So do keep this in mind, not just for corporate income tax, but likely also for tax withholding. And also withholding obligations will arise if there's social security contributions due, particularly if the employer's social security cannot be remitted by the individual. So the PE considerations, the remote work should not trigger so fast a PE. So we need to keep in mind that this was not something that the marketplace wanted. So OECD provided some guidelines in avoiding that home work would readily create or trigger a PE. There is some guidance provided now, and there's more detail behind it, but generally, if an employee works less than 50% of the time from home or the home location or the home country, and the remainder in the host country, for example, then a PE is assumed not present. Vice versa, on the other hand, if there's more than 50% of home work working from home, then it's likely or it's possible that a PE exists, but there should be a commercial test that needs to be followed first. So what does this presence in practice mean? So to close off this topic, how to take action is analyze your current and anticipated international work population. Look at the roles. So look at the PE risk for your current international workers and implement sort of a PE risk protection model. And as the roles that I've mentioned, please have a look at what they are allowed to do. Negotiations representing sales. And then we're coming close to the end of our session.
Yes,
but you have
we are.
You have some bonus, Eline.
Yes, some bonus notes, I think. Some topics which are important for the next year or so, or 2027. New legislation will be put in place regarding the mandatory licensing system for temporary work agencies. This will be starting in 2027, and the checks on this will commence in 2028. A new additional payroll tax, which is levied from employers, will be levied regarding the non-electric company cars. You may be thinking, okay, if I have a hybrid car, then I'm safe. But no, it's completely non-electric or completely electric cars which are exempt from this ruling. Additionally, please keep in mind your end-of-year benefit reporting. Just make sure you continuously monitor this. And the last part, the false self-employment audits by the DTA are currently in full force. Assessments are being implemented to different employers. You can see it in court law, Uber, Deliveroo cases. So please keep this in mind, I would say, for the next upcoming years. Yeah.
Have you seen some real-life cases on the false employment?
I have, and corrections have already been made, and people have been having problems. Let's keep it at that.
But you were able to solve them?
We have been able to solve them, yes.
Very good. What about this non-electric company cars? Because I think this is one of the rules that's missed by many employers. Do you see any active questions coming from clients?
We do, yes and no, because there's still a transitional period for current company cars. So if you've implemented these cars, I think before 2023, I mean, then there's no issue up until 2027. But still, it's going to be a problem for basically every company who uses non-electric company cars in 5 years. So make sure that if you have a new lease arrangement that's coming up, make sure to make it completely electric if you don't want to pay this extra levy of 12%. I think what's also important to note is it's levied when the car is used for private use. Well, usually for an extra levy, 500 kilometers is exempt, but not for this final levy. So every kilometer counts for private use. So that's maybe important to note.
Yeah, I think there will be a run on company cars that are non-electric just before the year ends.
Yes.
But we'll see how that goes. So look at your car park. Well, to close this off, Eline, any final considerations for the audience?
I think the people just need to make sure to have good assessments within the company, make sure your HR and tax department are well aligned. I think that's basically it. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. To avoid that we're going to be repetitive for tracking individuals, we're happy to close this part of our webinar. Thank you for sticking with us. And now we'll go to the next part for Schouten Zekerheid with Marissa and Jan Maarten. Well, here we go. We actually have one question, and that touches on pensions. So I will leave this question now because you'll be explaining a lot about this. Please, Jan Maarten, Marissa, take it away.
Thank you. So thank you all for joining this webinar. I would like to start with an introduction of ourselves. I'm Marissa de Pauw, consultant at Schouten Zekerheid for employee benefits, and I'm here together with my colleague Jan Maarten van Bokhoven, also consultant for employee benefits.
Thank you, Marissa, for the introduction. Well, some words about Schouten Zekerheid. Schouten Zekerheid is a Dutch insurance broker. We are independent, have about approximately 300 employees. Our office is in Rotterdam, but recently we also have a new office in Zwolle. And good to know we have an international focus. So we provide guidance locally, but also internationally. And then the agenda for today. Well, there's one topic, and it's all about pensions. So I'll focus on workplace pension plans offered by the employer. Then we'll discuss the new pension law, and I'll share some practical insights on key decisions that need to be made as a result of the new pension law.
So, Maarten, what does the Dutch pension system in the Netherlands look like at this moment?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, when you look at the pension landscape, we identify 3 pension sources. First, we have our government offering state retirement pension. And then the second source is the employer, the workplace pension plan. And the third one is the individual pension solution. For example, an individual pension account. During this webinar, we will focus on the workplace pension plan, so the choices the employer needs to make. Well, and when we zoom in into the workplace pension market, then we see that most employers participate in sectoral pension funds because they have to, because they fall under the collective labor agreement, and that also means that pension choices are made collectively. Such employers do not need to make any decision. And this is different when you have the pension plan at a private pension provider, because, for example, an insurance company, then the employer needs to make choices.
So what types of pension plans do employers usually offer in the Netherlands?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, we see two types of pension plans. Defined benefit plans, also referred to as DB plans, and defined contribution plans, referred to as DC plans. DC plans are investment based, and DB plans, in DB plans there is a guarantee, so the pension provider guarantees a specific payment from the retirement date. Employers who do not fall under the collective labor agreement almost always offer a DC plan. So our focus will mainly be on DC plans. Well, and I explained it, it's an investment plan. So each employee has a investment policy, and on a monthly basis premium are added to the policy, and there is that value in the policy that expires on the retirement date, and then it is used to finance pension payments. And on the next slide you see an example of a DC contribution table. And it's just an example, but we see it more often, the coverage level in this table. And the defined contribution is calculated by multiplying the age-based contribution percentage by the salary. And we never calculate with the full salary. There's always a threshold that is deducted, that is not pensionable.
And why is there a threshold?
The threshold, yeah, it's typical Dutch, but the threshold reflects the state pension. Our government also takes care of state pension through AOW. And for that reason, that part of the salary is not pensionable at the employer. Well, on the next slide you see an example using the same table in which an employee aged 35 has a salary of 49,172. The threshold is deducted, resulting in the pension base or pensionable amount, and that's multiplied by the age-based contribution percentage. So this is how it works in most DC plans in currently.
Okay, and this is all about the investments, but is the life insurance also included in the pension plan?
Yeah, that's also included. Yeah, pension plans include savings for retirement, but also life insurance coverage. And we call that survivor's pension. And survivor's pension consists of partner's pension and orphan's pension. Partner's pension is a lifelong payment. It's an annuity, so a lifelong annuity, guaranteed. And the orphan's pension is paid out for each surviving child until the child reaches adulthood. Well, the partner's pension and orphan's pension amounts are based on salary, but that's important. It's also based on the total possible service time of an employee. So if an employee joins the company at a younger age, then the total possible service time is longer. And that means that the partner's pension and the orphan's pension amount is also higher. And when an employee joins the company at a later age, the partner's and orphan's pension amounts are shorter because the total possible service time is shorter. Well, that will change, but we'll explain it in the next slides under the new system. So the formula to calculate partners and orphans pension.
Can you maybe tell a bit more about the new pension regulations?
Yes, of course, because that's a hot topic and also the reason for choosing this topic. We have a new pension law in the Netherlands. It's called Wet Toekomst Pensioenen, and it came into force on the 1st of July 2023. So newly introduced pension plans had to comply with the new pension law immediately. But for employers with an existing plan, they have until 2028, the 1st of January 2028, to bring the plan in compliance with the new law. This is referred to as the transition period. Well, two key changes are introduced. First of all, defined benefit plans that guarantee a certain payment from the retirement date are no longer allowed under the new system, and so the only allowed pension plan type is the DC plan. But the DC plans will be based, so the age-based contribution tables are replaced by a flat rate contribution. So that means that under the new system, employees will be entitled to a defined contribution that is regardless of age. Well, that's a major change. But there is a transitional rule. Age-based contribution tables are still allowed and can continue for current participants. So if you choose that approach, you split the plan. You keep the age-based table for existing staff members, and only new hires are, will participate in the plan based on a flat rate contribution. We call this grandfathering. Well, if you introduce a flat rate for current employees, then you need to draft a transition plan. That's good to realize. The transition plan, in the transition plan, you agree on compensation for employees who are negatively impacted by the switch to a flat rate contribution.
So do you also need a transition plan if you keep the age-based tables for your current employees?
No, that's not required then. So if you choose the grandfathering solution, then, well, you could say the employer keeps the promise, the age-based contribution table remains applicable to them, and in that case there is no need to draft a transition plan. Well, it's not only about moving to a flat rate. There's also another change. I already mentioned it. There is a new calculation method for partner's pension and orphan's pension in the event of death before retirement. In the old formula, this was not only based on salary, but also based on the total possible service time, or you could say the age at which the employee joins the company. Well, this will change. It will be, under the new system, a percentage of salary. So partner's pension will still be an annuity, but it will be expressed as a percentage of salary, and it also applies to orphan's pension. Good to know there's no threshold anymore, so it will be based on the salary. Still capped at 137,800, which is the fiscal cap. That applies to both the investment premium, the DC, and also the life insurance coverage. The other change is that that employees must join the plan from the age of 18. This was 21 before 2024, but it's now 18 years.
So could you maybe summarize what choices the employer needs to make?
Yeah, that's a good point. So this is what the, that's a good question. This is what the new pension law is about, but to make it as practical as possible, I added a slide with the outlining the choices the employer needs to make now. And the first, of course, is when should the pension plan be adjusted? Well, that's clear, the latest on the 1st of January 2028. So I would say do it now, 2027, but the latest it must be done in 2028. And the second question is, should we continue using the age-based contribution table for current participants. That's the grandfathering solution I was referring to. And what we see is that most employers choose that approach. It's very efficient, and it's for them a possibility that enables them to keep the promise they made to the employees, to keep giving them the age-based contribution. Well, and the other two questions, we will discuss them in the next two slides because they are the key decisions. First, what will be the fixed flat rate contribution percentage under the new plan? But secondly, how will partners' pension and orphans' pension be calculated in the new plan? The first one, the level of contribution. So this is about the investment premium, the defined contribution or the DC. And a lot of employers come to us and they ask, how should we determine the flat rate contribution for our future plan? And there are different considerations, different approaches here. The most opted one is to look at the average contribution in the current plan. So they look what they on average currently pay, what the average contribution percentage is at the moment, and they choose that level for the future plan. But another approach is to also look at, of course, the quality of the pension plan. And then to identify which contribution percentage, flat rate contribution percentage, leads to the same pension outcome, so that the quality of the pension plan after a full career is the same, and the outcome is at the same level. The last one, always important, benchmarking. So to also take into account what other employers are choosing. And all employers are now making in that transition period, and we see more and more employers making decisions. And well,
is there already some information available for the benchmarking? Because it's new, of course.
Yeah, that's a question we often receive, and indeed, yeah, it's new. So there is limited availability, but we do receive some information, feedback from pension providers. So they share information about the average contribution percentage, sometimes at the sectoral level. But also pension software providers provide that information. What we, for example, see is that when you exclude sectoral pension funds, and we look at our own clients, but also at the information we receive from software providers, is that the average now is approximately 13%. That includes employer and employee portion. But this is really an average. Some employers are well above and some employers are lower. And it's important to realize that this is excluding sectoral pension funds, because pension plans at sectoral pension funds are often much more generous. Well, there is a maximum. There is a fiscal maximum that's 30%. And the second question, so the first key question is the level, the contribution level for the defined contribution, the investment premium. The second one is the coverage level for survivor's pension, for the life insurance coverage. And here we see that there is less focus on the current coverage, because the formula is totally different. So here we see that there is not a wide, that employers just choose from a range between 20 to 30, 35. So most employers stay within that range for partners pension. And for orphans pension, it's close to the, 8%, sometimes a little bit lower, 8 and 12%. The average what we see for partners pension is 30% and 10% for orphans pension, but that's based on our own experience now. Well, again, there is a legal framework. So the maximum allowable partners pension is 50% of salary, and the maximum allowable orphans pension is 20% of salary.
So you mentioned this, the partner and orphans pension will change, not only for new hires, but as well for the current employees.
Yes.
So is that something, if the current employees get less, what happens then?
Yeah, I understand the question. Yeah, this grandfathering is not possible here. So this formula, how to calculate partners and orphans pension, will change for all staff members. And it can be that based on the new formula, the partners pension and orphans pension is lower. Well, and if that's the case, then it's possible, and you could say required, to compensate the employees. And it's possible in the pension plan. So the partners pension, the orphans pension insured amount is then supplemented to the previous level, so to the level under the old plan. And then we arrive at the summary. Well, it's clear also from the presentation that all pension plans are impacted. DB plans are not allowed anymore, and DC plans must be based on a flat rate. So regardless of age, a flat rate investment premium, and the life insurance, the formula for the life insurance coverage must also change. Well, what we see is that most employers with a DC plan choose the grandfathering solution, so they keep the age-based table for existing staff members, and they only introduce a flat rate for future hires. And after that decision has been made, two key decisions remain. And the first one, I explained it, what will be the flat rate the flat rate defined contribution. And the second one is what will be the partners and orphans pension formula to calculate the insured amounts. Well, this is our field of expertise. So
when do we need to contact Schouten Zekerheid? At what time? Because 1st of January 2028, you still have plenty of time?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that. So it's less than 2 years, 1.5 years. And what we see is that the waiting times are increasing at pension providers, but also pension consultants are very busy. So and decision making can take some time because there are different stakeholders. Sometimes there's a works council or a headquarter that needs to decide. So I would say it's really time to get started if you haven't yet. If you haven't started yet, and if you need support, we are very happy to meet you and discuss the options available. The contact details are on the next slide.
Well, we actually thank you, Jan Maarten, Marissa. Always when you talk about pensions, I get lost a little bit. And I know a lot about this. But this is, every time I learn something new, so this is really good. We only received one question. It might be repetitive, and I have another question, surprise. The question we got was actually halfway, was for employers who haven't yet started preparing for the new Dutch pension system. What would be the first concrete step you would recommend taking in 2026? So the first concrete step.
a concrete step.
And you cannot say contact Schouten Zekerheid.
Yeah, I was thinking of contact Schouten Zekerheid. Well, I think this is also a good moment to review your pension plan, what the outcome is for employees when they have a full career with the employer. And the plan must be changed now, the latest on the 1st of January. So this is also a good moment to review and to think again about what you want to offer your employees, what you want them to receive when they reach the retirement date, and take it from there. So to also focus on coverage level and not only on budget, because we see more often that employers always look at, well, that a lot of employers have a focus on budget, but this is also about what is the pension outcome that you want for your employees.
Very good, very good. Maybe one last question. I mean, we assume that all of the employers that are listening right now, they get the message they need to have a pension in place. But is that true? What if you don't have a pension plan offered right now?
Yeah, it's also a good question. Well, I explained in one of the slides that we have sectoral pension funds in place. So most employers, but also employees, participate in sectoral pension funds because they fall under the collective labor agreement and they have to. But if you do not fall under the collective labor agreement, or when there is no mandatory sectoral pension fund in place, then there is no obligation employers have to offer a pension plan. It's good common practice. Most employers in the Netherlands offer a pension plan, but if you don't have one, then it's very important to take action yourself. There are, well, you could of course reach out to your employer and discuss this important employment condition. And otherwise, you can do it yourself. There are individual pension accounts available. We call it lijfrente, in which you can save for retirement in a tax-friendly way.
Yeah. Very well. Well, thank you. Any questions left here? No?
Yep.
So it seems that as there's no questions from the audience, I'll just talk very slowly. So if you want to enter any question, you can still do that. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you very much, first of all, to you, the audience, for staying with us for almost a full hour. And of course to our speakers, Eline, Marissa and Jan Maarten. So on behalf of Forvis Mazars and Schouten Zekerheid, thank you again for joining us. There's a lot to do in 2026, 2027 and 2028 and beyond. If you're interested in learning more about all of these topics, more in-depth analysis or advice, or you want to know more about the topics in general, please do subscribe to our webinars. We organize them quite often. Come to a close today. Well, thank you for being with us and wishing you a great rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.